The weapons these men carry are supplied by the United States. The specialized equipment, supplied by the United States. These helicopters, supplied by the United States. The operating cost, thousands of dollars an hour, a cost covered by the United States. All for this anti-narcotics unit called the Junglas, Colombia's elite airborne commandos. If the U.S. has a proxy army in Colombia, the Junglas are it. Even though they are technically a Colombian police force, they have essentially morphed into America's own shock troops in the war on drugs.
The Junglas are what I call Americanized troops.
Ignacio Gomez is one of Colombia's leading investigative journalists. He spent years writing about the war in Colombia. He's been honored with an International Press Freedom Award, but there also have been several attempts on his life. Created nearly 20 years ago with money from the U.S., Junglas were first trained by the British SAS. In 1991, U.S. Special Forces took over. The support doesn't end with training. The United States has pumped $43 million into the specialized police unit and supplied 72 aircraft, including 7 Blackhawks. The Junglas are the only Colombian force to receive such sustained and dedicated assistance from the U.S., and the only force to embrace it so completely. What does America get in return?
The Americans are not here as witnesses or advisors. They participate directly in the development and execution of operations. They participate making decisions.
U.S. Embassy officials point out that the Junglas have an excellent record of capturing narco traffickers, and that they discover and destroy dozens of cocaine labs a year. Today, the Junglas are operating out of this small airstrip in Mariquita, Colombia. Commanders have intel on several working drug labs in the surrounding jungle, and the liaison between them and the U.S. is yet another shadowy figure we've been asked not to identify. We can tell you this much. He's a former Special Forces soldier who now works for the U.S. Embassy in Bogota as an advisor to the Narcotics Affairs section. He coordinates training, equipment, and operations for the Junglas. But he doesn't stay behind in an embassy office. He's there on every mission, although he never wears U.S. insignia on his uniform. To prepare for today's strike on the drug lab, Jungla commanders briefed their men on who they might encounter, showing them photos of FARC commanders who have battalions in the area. The FARC is an armed rebel group that controls a third of the country. No one knows how many cocaine labs they operate near here. Just outside the briefing room door, evidence of another way the U.S. is involved in the Colombian war. DynCorp, a billion-dollar American defense contractor heavily invested in Colombia, receives the lion's share of military contracts here. The half dozen or so DynCorp employees at this base fly fumigation missions over coca crops, a job that often puts them in the line of fire.
All these little patches. You see them all over the wing. All these are bullet holes. All these.
Not everyone is comfortable with DynCorp's presence in the war here.
I am sure the Americans are doing more than what people know. First of all, because people do not know what they are doing here in Colombia. The topic is not being discussed. It is not being analyzed.
Hidden in the jungle, drug labs are impossible to find without help. Advance teams go undercover to recruit informants who are paid $2,000 if they lead the Junglas to a lab. Of course, if their identity is revealed, the drug lords would kill them. On the mission, Junglas try to make sure this informant looks like one of them. He gets a military haircut, a uniform, and even a replica weapon to carry. And we're off. Except for the roar of the chopper blades, it's quiet. The Junglas understand that being dropped deep in the jungle means they might encounter the FARC, who often have the upper hand. Junglas have lots of specialized training, but in this situation, virtually no backup. The suspected drug lab is 20 kilometers or more from the nearest village. The informant points out the lab's location. It's impossible to see from the air. The drop-off point is a peak too narrow to set down on. so the pilot just hovers while we get out. That was a hell of an exit. Didn't really land, just kind of jumped out. Let's go. We're definitely in the middle of it. The Hunglas move with care, hunting for the lab. I soon see that this won't be easy. And that this is no training exercise. The Hunglas up ahead have seen something and called for a halt. So the squad's broken into two, facing outboard, looking for anyone running through the jungle, any kind of threat. Their biggest threat here are snipers. The people at the drug lab won't stay and fight because they know they'll be overpowered, but they may take hidden positions and snipe off one or two of the Hunglas. The mud on the path winding through the foliage is so thick it pulls your shoes off.
Entonces procedamos hacia ese QTH. Ya encontramos uno. ¿Listo?
Up ahead they found a donkey trail, which doesn't mean much to me, but it's a sure sign for the Hunglas. Because the labs are so remote, they use mules to carry supplies in and the cocaine out. The guides for these mules must have fled into the jungle when they heard the choppers overhead. Hunglas check their bundles for drugs. Got two mules here, I see a couple more down the pass, so I didn't have time to take them with them. The drug lab must be near, or at least I hope so. It's a steep descent down into the lab. Oh my gosh. Oh, this one's big. Evidence of a huge cocaine operation is all around. Giant tubs that hold the chemicals and pipes that bring in the water. This lab was cooking cocaine when we arrived. They treat it like a crime scene, snapping pictures of everything as evidence, because none of what you see now will exist after the Hunglas are done. This no smoking sign isn't about the workers' health. It's about preventing an explosion. If you look up here, you can see the mist in the air. Those are the chemicals coming out. Acetone is the main chemical in the cocaine-making process. It can melt plastics, and the smell of it burns my nose. But the workers' health is not the issue. They spend 24 hours a day here. They sleep in these makeshift barracks. They live in terror of being busted by anti-narcotics fighters, but are equally afraid that if they abandon their post, their drug lord bosses will take revenge. It's not much of a choice, but this is a poor country, and the jungle doesn't offer many jobs to choose from.
You got two things.
This is a big find.
This is not just one lab, this is two labs. Because you have a sister element up here.
Esto es cocaína. 1110 kilogramos de cocaína pura. Esta es de la pura. Okay?
Pure cocaine.
Yes.
Wow, kilo of pure cocaine. That's probably worth more than $30,000 on the street in New York. It's not cut down. This place could produce 400 kilos a day in that lab alone. That's $12 million worth of cocaine a day. It's easy to understand why the cocaine business is so attractive here. How can you tell it's real? It's pure cocaine. Yeah. The anti-drug forces say that losing all this cocaine and the money it would bring will hurt the drug makers, but destroying the lab hurts them even more. Every day spent rebuilding a lab is a day not spent making cocaine. This is a huge victory for these guys today, but how many labs exist in this country like this? Countless. Blow this one up, 2 more tomorrow, how many more the next day? The success of this mission doesn't even make a dent in the flow of cocaine from Colombia to America. According to a recent U.S. government report, it's still on the rise.
Today, cocaine is more pure and cheaper, and therefore has had more availability on the streets in the United States.
The Hunglas lay demolition cord and get ready to blow the lab, and then evacuate the area. On the way out, we notice a sign of misplaced faith in the Almighty. Now it's back to the landing zone. Load up in the chopper. Make sure everyone is accounted for, and head back to the base. There it goes. No matter how impressive these Hunglas are, No matter how well executed any single mission is, some say the drug labs are the wrong target.
They are fighting a wrong enemy. They do not need to fight the coca, but the tons of cocaine that are being exported and the traffickers that are moving the tons of cocaine.
Surveillance flights from the Manta Air Base in Ecuador may provide intelligence for these missions. But if the missions themselves are ineffective, what will it matter if the president of Ecuador succeeds in driving the Americans out? Colombia will continue to feed an ever-growing appetite for cocaine. And the unceasing flow of funds and firepower will never bring victory in this shadow war.